Recording in progress. Todd Bedard, mover, shaker, gym teacher, educator, music fan. Thank you for being here. Thank you for
Thanks
being
for
here.
having me, Rod. It's always a pleasure to chat music with you.
Yes.
I think music fan is my favorite label, and educator is what I do and what I enjoy. So, but music fan is what I'm not in school.
That's why I said this. Todd Bedard is not a musician.
Not at all. In fact, you had me experience one time on stage.
Let's tell them about that story.
All right. So somehow you're blurry now. I don't know why.
What's going on with that?
Oh no, that's all right. I'll tell the story while you do it. So we ran this open mic night. It was at Metropolis Collective in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. It was a wonderful open mic set up for young people to come in and ply their trade and give it a shot on stage and see what was going on. And I, of course, enjoy hosting that kind of stuff because that's what I do and like to connect to people and watch kids grow and watch kids play. And specifically, there was one kid on stage that I was somewhat biased to, my own son, Logan, the drummer, in the house band. And somebody somewhere wanted to come in and play Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer. And of course, growing up in the 80s, that was if you don't know anything about Bon Jovi, you know that song. Like people that don't know Bon Jovi, like, tell me something about Bon Jovi. I don't know, Living on a Prayer. Like that's the song everyone knows. And you decided that you needed a bass player and that I could play bass. And I was like, Rod, I don't play bass. You're like, no, put your bass on. I'll show you how to play it. So it was like 2 chords or 3 chords. And you had me doing it. And I was like, all right, well, I get to play bass with my son. Like I don't get to play music with my son because I'm not a musician. I've sang with him. And by sang, you should see the air quotes. But sang with him. And so I was up there playing, and the entire time, like that song, that one performance live with an instrument on, convinced me that I never want to do this, that I am just what musicians need, and that is fans.
Yes.
Because I was so scared that I was going to screw up the band. Not that I would have, because you are all professionals, but I'm trying to keep time with Logan, and I'm trying to watch your fingers, and I'm trying to, at some point then I got excited. I wanted to go too fast, and then I got relaxed, and I wanted to go too slow. And it was just a whole thing. And that was what was going through my head instead of just relaxing and feeling it, like real musicians do. So that day I decided that would be my last performance along with my first performance.
That's just a dare. That's just a dare. You don't understand this yet.
Hey, I'm older now. I can resist peer pressure. It's not like when you were younger. You don't resist peer pressure, but
yeah. Come on, you want to be cool.
I am.
You want to do what the cool kids do.
I'll find other ways to be cool. Like I'll be cool in the front row clapping for you while you play.
So here's the thing. I said Todd Bedard is not a musician, but it's like what he does in like every music scene needs good energy.
Yeah.
And every music scene is like, okay, so you can do this. Well, I know this guy that can do that.
Yeah.
This guy can do that, and this guy can do that. That's what we call connectors.
Yeah.
You are a connector. You're of good energy. You're more good energy than you're probably even aware.
Yeah. Well,
because it reaches.
It is about being positive. I mean, nobody's ever gotten anywhere in life like being mean to people. I mean, they have, but
yeah, it's not true. Yeah.
Nobody that is mean to people when they get somewhere in life, like leaves a trail of followers in their path that are excited about it. I think it's much more important, especially in the music world, because I think sometimes in school, at least what I witness is we try to put athletics and connect athletics to music and create competition. So we'll go to these jazz festivals and there's competition, and we'll go to the band on the weekends and there's competition. And really, it's not about competition. It's about favorites. I mean, once you get to a
competition, when you think competitively, what competition does, it puts you on the same, chart as this football team versus that football team.
Right. And music isn't that. Music isn't.
It isn't, because we can both win.
Right.
And there's kind of no comparing us to.
Right.
How do you?
But the argument could be, all right, well, there's competition when there's an audition. So hypothetically, you and I are auditioning for the same guitar spot in a band. And that's not even competition either, because your hands are different than my hands, even though I don't play. If I did, that's true.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants you, they're not
So
going to want
rarely is
me.
it ever that kind of judgment.
It's about favorite.
Yeah.
It's about fit.
Yeah.
And so it's
Sometimes
not
the guy that fits. We all heard the stories about the guy who can barely tune his guitar, but he was a better energy fit for the band, so they kept the guy who could barely play his instrument.
well, the perfect example of that is Poison. I mean, many people who are fans of that music from the 80s may know the story that Slash from Guns N' Roses auditioned for Poison the same day CC DeVille auditioned for Poison. And Slash, as he will tell the story, played the songs perfectly. And CC didn't even learn the songs. But had Slash gotten the gig in Poison, you probably wouldn't know who Poison is to this day.
Yeah, because CC was the right fit, because there's so much more about the final package than great guitar.
Correct.
You got a vibe. You got a vibe. Maybe
that band isn't about musicality. That band is about having fun.
Yeah. Yep. So now, let's go back to your childhood. Like well, not even going back, way back. Like say when you started getting into the scene.
I mean, the scene didn't come till high school because I mean, I wasn't allowed to go. I mean, I got a couple of tastes here and there with my cousin Dave. My first concert was 4th grade. I saw Rick Springfield on the Working Class Dog Tour, which, if you don't know what that album is, it spawned the entire hit. That again, if you know nothing about Rick Springfield, you know he sang Jesse's Girl, and that's what album that was on. So I saw that one. It was my first concert. I had to go with my parents because I was in 4th grade. I mean, you didn't drop your 4th grade. You didn't drop your 4th grader off at the concerts even back then.
Yeah.
And then my first concert as a young person that I was allowed to go to by myself, which I went with teenage friends, was Alice Cooper on the Constrictor tour in 1987 at Hershey.
I was there.
And you were there.
As was Rick Kunkel.
I saw you there too. You didn't.
Yeah.
You didn't say hi to me. I kept waving, but you didn't.
I look like Tommy Shaw.
Yeah. You were in your Styx mode then. I was just like, Rod, and you just ignored me.
I was too busy crimping my hair.
Yeah.
So Megadeth opened.
Yeah, Megadeth on the Peace Sells tour was opening. And I mean, so like when you look back on like getting caught in the scene, like that was pretty cool. Like because Peace Sells, but who's buying? One of the most iconic records ever. Alice Cooper, one of the most iconic artists ever. I mean, Constrictor is not the landmark album for Alice Cooper by any stretch, but it certainly was his resurgence in the 80s.
It was absolutely his comeback.
So it was his first comeback. And the fact that he's still playing today is probably because he started with Constrictor in 87. So, that's the scene. And then, my parents thankfully were kind enough to allow me to figure out a way to get into some of the local establishments to see some club shows. So I used to go see Fuel before they were even called Fuel over at what used to be called Cahoots in the Sheridan, which there's no bar there. There's no bar there anymore, but that was a music venue that was Fuel was the house band. They played Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I think Sundays too. I didn't go much on Sundays, but pretty much from age 18 on, I was there as much as I could be. And because for me, it wasn't about drinking. I didn't care about alcohol. In fact, I didn't even drink once until my senior year, but it was about going to see music. And I got to see my cousin Dave took me to the 1988 Van Halen's Monsters of Rock tour in JFK Stadium, God rest its soul, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And that was a magnificent day of music. Metallica played before Dokken, if you can imagine that. But Jason Newsted's one of his first tours with the band. So that was Injustice for All tour. It was. And the small little band that we thought was going to be the next Led Zeppelin, called Kingdom Come, opened up, and they had James Kotak on drums, who ended up going on to actually be the drummer in the Scorpions. After Herman Rarebell left. After, I forget, Savage Amusement maybe is the. You're better than me. I don't remember. I am the only person possibly. Well, I don't know. I don't want to compare, but go ahead. I'm geeky about the 80s. Let's say. Say what were you going to say? I was thinking like Eddie Trunk, but that's not a comparison because Eddie Trunk's just like that's like comparing yourself to Michael Jordan if you're a basketball player. That's just stupid. There's got to be other people that are better than I am at that. Exactly.
We geek out that way. So now,
Yeah, but that's the
so you
scene.
get into college, you see the Tragically Hip, and you
Oh,
see,
Tragically, it was one of the most magnificent bands I've ever seen in my life. And the cool
Mhm.
thing about it is they played the Metron. They played a bunch of rooms around here. I saw them at the Villa Leo and the Metron. And
I saw them at the Villa Leo.
yeah, and there was
I saw
just
them
like,
at Metron. They opened up for Eric Johnson when I saw him.
oh, okay. I saw them on their own show. Somebody, I
Yeah.
think the Badleys might have opened up for them.
Okay.
And I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly who
Tommy
opened
Taylor
up.
was the drummer.
But it
When I
was
saw him.
like there wasn't a full house. And you're just like, how can you? But there was a bunch of Canadians there because at the time they were like, oh, we'll drive down from Canada to see him. It was $5 to get in,
Where was
and
this?
at the Metron.
Okay.
And they were
Yeah, because
like,
when we saw him at the Villa Leo, it was a full house.
yeah. I mean, I think the Metron blew them up. Like people were like, oh man, that put them way over. But the Canadians were like, they're selling out Molson Center in like 20,000 seat arenas in Canada, but
Yeah.
down here you can see them in clubs. So I mean, I don't blame them either. If I loved the band that much, I'd have probably done it too.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
No, they were. I don't know that America has an equivalent.
yeah, no, because I think Canada's kind of a their own little country, and they don't extend beyond. They don't have a global influence, not a big global influence.
Mhm.
Let's say. I mean, obviously there's
But there's a
Rush.
certain amount of like with Canada. Canada's got a music scene in that
They do.
it's the Tragically Hip is almost like a patriotic.
Hmm.
If you live in Canada, you worship these guys because Canadian references are all over. Canadian
and
pride.
yeah, and when
Uh,
Gord passed, I mean, Justin Trudeau went to Gord's funeral when
Yeah.
Gord passed away. I mean, and the entire last show was broadcast on closed circuit TV, and I think they gave everyone a day off or something because you're just watching them, and you see all the, like, if you watch the documentary on the final show, like people just sitting in front of their television sets crying watching this band. So yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, but yeah, the Tragically Hip was there, and the biggest scene for me in the 90s was just the local scene, like the Badleys, the Clarks, the Emily's Toy Box. There's a bunch of other bands that I can't even remember their names because back then you would sign up for the mailing list. That's that thing where they put a stamp on it and it
I got a
arrives in
fun.
your
I got a
mailbox.
fun.
Yeah,
Badley's mailing list story.
yeah. Okay.
I opened for him once
Oh, nice.
with the Jeff Gibble group.
Okay.
And the Jeff Gibble group was like a fusion, kind of Eric Johnson-esque kind of
Yeah.
thing. We are clearly different than the Badleys, but
Yeah.
they were very supportive in letting us open for them because it was not a match necessarily, but theirs was good music, ours was good music, and I think that's what they thought. So we had this little thing, a clipboard that says, "Please sign our mailing list."
Yeah. Yep.
And it's like we get done, we played our hearts out. There's somewhere online, there's a picture of the Jeff Gibble group
Uh-huh.
at the Tourist Inn. This is in 2000.
Yeah.
We look at the Tourist Inn. We look at. I'm done. Get my stuff off, gear off the third. I'm the guy who has the clipboard. I look at the clipboard and it said, I thought I saw that there's writing on it, and I thought I was all excited. We're gaining fans and all this stuff. This is how you did it back in the day, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And it said, "Get the hell off the stage." So if anybody wonders why, like being a musician, you got to have humility
Sure.
because there's more times than not that you have to love what you do because it's not ego. It's
Right.
actually, it hurts your ego a lot of the times.
Well, the hard part for being a musician too is you are the product.
Yes.
So you have to sort of brag. It feels like bragging,
Mhm.
promote yourself. But at the same time, growing up, you're taught by your family and your parents to be humble and not brag because bragging isn't right. So you being the product, it's probably this war of good and evil almost, like, hey, I got to brag because I want to get the gig, I want to get the show, I want to get the spot in the band, whatever.
Mhm.
But same time, like, can't walk in and be like, you know what, I am so awesome, check me out.
Mhm.
You want to see me dazzle you, like you can't,
Yeah.
because everybody laugh at you, and it's a balance. It really is. It's a very fun
Yeah.
balance to work
But it's
with.
like I don't know if people will get annoyed with me, but like back in the Groove Jones days, I would tell people. I wasn't shy about it. Because
Mhm.
one thing I learned from all my other bands previous to that was if you don't let people know that you're playing, and if
Sure.
you don't create an event, they will not show up. And guess
Right.
what? My neighbors show up to 1 or 2 gigs.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
They don't, you can't rely on your parents. You can't rely on your neighbors. You can't rely, those are not going to be the people that keeps a band together. And
Right.
that's just clipping your,
Well,
clipping.
the ticket to any success with that kind of marketing is something called third circle marketing. So
Mhm.
first circle marketing is your friends and family who you could play the worst kind of music to everyone's ears, but they'll love whatever you do because you're their
Mhm.
family. Second circle is their friends and family are going to do it because their friend likes you, so they might like you. But the
Mhm.
third circle marketing is the people that don't know you, that have
Yeah.
no idea. It's like, I heard someone had a car accident today. Well, I'm sad. I'm like, as a human being, you're like, well, I'm glad everyone's okay, but I don't read it again and I don't go look them up on Facebook to see if everybody's okay and try to
Yeah.
insert myself. It's third circle. We don't,
Yeah. Yeah.
those are the ones when you can get the third circle people who you don't know to
Yeah.
care about what you do and your art, you
Mhm.
made it. You've
Yeah.
made
Yeah.
it, you know.
Yeah. As annoying as,
Then you're on the upward trajectory.
yeah. 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 As, yeah. Maybe I overlooked it, overstate the annoying part, but this is
Well,
how else are you going to get your word out there?
well, I mean, annoying is more of the, the personal in your face stuff. Whereas like if you tell me like, hey, you come see my band, you're gonna have a great time. That's fair.
Mhm.
You're gonna come see my band, you might like them. That's fair.
Mhm.
Come see my band. I am freaking awesome. That
Or
might be that
you
might be
didn't come see
annoying.
my band. How dare you?
Yeah, or you didn't come see my band, so like I took it
It was
personally.
epic
Well,
and you missed it.
yeah, exactly. Well, darn it, now you're messing with my FOMO. I feel like I'm gonna miss everything now.
Right.
So yeah, no, it's. I mean,
So how did you like? Okay, so you took up guitar for about a month, and
yeah.
then you had a pretty substantial event happen in your life. It kind of made you reevaluate your music.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to learn to play guitar for me. Like I started to
Mhm.
take guitar lessons, and I had no aspirations. Like I sang in a band one time in high school. It was a lot of fun. We were a one-off band with a one-off gig. Great time. Probably could have figured out maybe wanting to do it again, but it wasn't realistic.
What
We
song
weren't
did you
ready.
sing?
Oh, it was a whole set. We did a 2-hour set.
Oh
So
yeah!
we did Guns, Motley, Poison. Yeah, we did the whole deal.
Wow.
I forget. There was a couple of Metallica. We threw Metallica in there. It was an 80s rock fest
Okay.
after the prom. Good time.
All right.
We did about 2 hours. So, but whatever. That was fun. We had a good time. But I forget where I was going. Oh, taking guitar lessons. I just wanted to learn to play guitar just to have some fun and play some songs in my own room instead of
Yeah.
having to like jam the air guitar. I wanted to learn to play guitar, and then obviously my son was born, and Logan the drummer, and practicing was great, but then when you're getting up twice a night to feed him or waking up with him, even though my wife was feeding him, it just you get too tired, and then it's like, well, I have other things I have to do and put my energy into, and
Priorities.
it kind of went by the wayside, and
Mhm.
it wasn't like it was just one of those things
Up
like,
until
all right, well, I
that time we did "Living on a Prayer."
yeah, I still have PTSD about it. Therapy's
Yeah.
getting through it
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's so. I mean, yeah, like I've always been a fan of music, and
Mhm.
like, I mean, it took me till I was 40 to decide maybe that I don't want to ever play, but
Mhm.
um, it. But I always want to be a fan. I mean,
Okay, so
the,
now Logan, does that wanting? Do you think that wanting to play music comes as a birth? Like, is there any sort of like genetic thing that
the
you're a
only
man of
thing I can think
science?
of, the only thing I can think of is while he was in utero,
Yeah.
Nicole and I went to see Tool, Michael Bublé, Billy Joel and Billy Joel and Elton John's piano face-to-face tour.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and a ton of other things. Like, we're just music fans. We've
Yeah.
always, and and we always have it on, so some nights we'll listen to like Tool and In This Moment and Perfect Circle,
Yeah.
and other nights we'll listen to Steely Dan and yacht rock playlists, and other nights we'll listen to alt, or some nights we'll listen to 80s alternative, and
In
it's
Nicole's case, it was hip hop. I know
she liked hip hop too.
she's the
Yeah,
queen of 80 or 90 80s and 90s hip hop.
she can geek out on that like I can geek out about 80s hard rock.
Yeah.
So so it's, I mean, she knows who
Which
wrote
makes her
stuff, who
super cool in
produced
my
it.
book.
Yeah, exactly. Like, she knows about, she could tell you
As
about
if
like
that matters, right?
Eazy-E and all that stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, that was, I think that component, I think it was environmental more than genetic, because
Okay.
if it was genetic, I'd have to be talented at something, and I'm not. So
Okay. Yeah.
so he
Well, you're
just
kidding,
honestly, what started it with him was I won tickets. This is a true story. I was sitting in drive-through at Burger King. Don't tell my phys ed staff. And waiting, and Wink 104 happened to be on, and they were like, "You want to win tickets to the Blue Man Group? Call now." And I call, and I'm like, "Hey, you're the fourth caller," whatever it was. I won tickets to see the Blue Man Group. It was two tickets. I'm like, "Oh, cool, date night." Logan was 5, I think, 4 or 5, 4 or 5, something like that. And I was like, date night, we'll get a babysitter, we'll go out, we'll watch, have a good show, it's free, because when you're a young couple, free is good, because then you can afford dinner or whatever. And I go home, I'm like, honey, we won tickets to see the Blue Man Group. She goes, I hate them, take your son.
Yeah.
Like, oh wow, okay. So I had to like kind of come to terms with this whole thing. Like, I thought I had a good date night planned, and all of a sudden it wasn't. I was taking my son on a date. I'm like, all right, well, here we go, have fun. So we planned it, and once he let go of it, it was fine. We had a great time. He and I did. We had all kinds of fun little adventures. I'd be interested to hear his take on what he remembers from it. But
I know he remembers.
But he had, like, we had the earmuffs on him and the ear plugs, because that was like all I cared about. And we watched the whole show, and they finished with Baba O'Reilly, which he didn't necessarily know that was the song that they were finishing with, but the whole show is percussion. I don't know if you know anything about Blue Man Group, but the whole show is drumming. There's some drum line stuff, there's some songs intermixed, there's a lot of theatrics. It's very like vaudeville-esque in a way.
They didn't have any like guitars or.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like there's a whole rock band behind it. In fact, more 80s geekery. The touring drummer for the Blue Man Group is Blas Elias, who played in Slaughter in the 80s. So, which is the Fly to the Angels band.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they finished with Baba O'Reilly, and he air drummed most of the night, but he really air drummed to that. And on the way home, he goes, Dad, I want to be a drummer. And so we got him a toy drum set for Christmas, and he quickly outgrew that. And we got him a better toy drum set. And it was like one of those first act metal kits. And I think he first started taking lessons on that. And then eventually it became like, oh crap, this is serious. And he had an affinity for it. He would just sit down there and work out beats. And then he work out his coordination. So he had 2-part coordination mostly at the beginning, and then eventually he got 3. And then we evolved to, I won't tell you the whole story because that's probably a whole interview in and of itself, but we found Jeremy Hummel, who was best known at the time for his work with Breaking Benjamin on their first 2 records, and
wonderful educator.
And Jeremy is probably one of the best is one of the best educators that I've ever met that doesn't have an education degree.
Okay.
Like that man knows things about teaching that took me 4 years and 2 degrees to learn. And he was a joy. And thankfully I had the privilege and joy to get to watch him teach my son, because he started so young. So I had to take notes. So I'd sit in on the drum lessons and just copiously take notes. And because I thought, well, if I send my 5-year-old in there for 30 minutes with a drum teacher, he's going to come out and be like, what'd you learn? He's going to go, I don't know how to do this, but so we could formulate some kind of practice thing. I did that. And I did that from, I think, finally Jeremy had to go, Todd, I think it's time that you wait outside. I was like, darn it, I'm having fun. So, I didn't want to, because I enjoyed watching him teach as much as I enjoyed watching Logan learn, but I certainly understood the reasoning for it. Eventually you get to a point where you have to let them go. Yeah.
So, and he was like 16 years old. So
I wasn't that old, Rod. Come on now. But yeah, I mean, shoot, Logan had a lesson with him just a few months ago, and I was like, can I sit in? And Logan's like, you really want to sit in? I'm like, I love watching Jeremy teach. Yes. He's like, that's a little weird, Dad. I'm like, I'll be quiet, I promise. So I just did.
I don't know why it's a little weird, but anyway, because you're an educator.
Because Logan's 18 and,
yeah,
probably doesn't want his dad around for everything anymore.
Yeah.
Which is okay. I don't take offense to it, but
yeah, I do.
it's part of the growth process that they all go through. So
yeah,
it's all
they don't need dad.
No,
they don't need dad anymore. And I get it.
If he'd have said no, I'd have just hidden the stairwell and listened. So that's fine.
Yeah. So the world that he grows up in, this is what creates a whole new kind of thing that you're thrust into, because you have this kid that practices its drum set.
Yep.
And now I've had this discussion before with people many times. They talk about he's a natural. What do you mean by natural?
That is, in
other words,
that is indeed the question.
Huh?
That is indeed the question.
Yeah. So what do you mean by natural? That he doesn't have to work at it?
Hmm.
Or
there's an interesting answer to that question that's on YouTube that you can actually go find.
Okay.
It's by a guy named John Riley, who was the head of the Manhattan School of Jazz Studies for a while, and an accomplished drummer in and of himself. Now lives in Lancaster County. If you want to know stupid geeky trivia that doesn't matter. And his answer was what he talks about it being the gift. Oh, you're a gifted player. You're a gifted this and a gifted that. And he goes, what's the gift? Because I have a little bit better eye-hand coordination than somebody else in my peer group. But what people don't see is they don't see the hours you put in when you're not on stage. They see the 2 hours a night. It's like when we were kids, I want to be a rock star. And you're like, 2 hours a night, that must be the best thing in the world. And then somebody goes and tries to do it. And they're like, oh, there's 22 other hours in the day.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other crap or hard things or less desirable things that goes into the show.
Yeah.
So it's really about like, do you have some extra coordination? Do you learn a little faster in that particular part of your brain? Yeah. I think that's
or do you find it fun? What some people consider a chore.
Sure.
You make a game out of it.
Absolutely.
It feeds you in some other way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that is something that make it into you want to be gifted, make it into something that is fun and don't treat it like a form of punishment.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, everything is hard. I had this conversation with a student the other day. They talked about motivation. He's like, well, I'm not motivated to do my homework. And I said, well, here's the secret. Nobody is. Nobody ever sitting around in the summer bored out of their mind and goes, you know what I could use right now? A little bit of homework. Like no one. Nobody wants to practice scales in piano or guitar or singing. Nobody wants to practice basic rudiments. But if you understand the pathway, you understand I got to put a little time into that so I can do the fun stuff. Then you can balance it. Now,
yeah.
Like
and
when
the better
Logan
you
was
get
learning,
at it, the more fun it is.
Right.
That is key.
Right. And I think you also have to, as an educator, you have to come in and go, like, not make it sound like I talked to somebody one time who said, well, kids really shouldn't play drum set until they're 12. I'm like, well, says who?
Yeah.
Like I got a kid sitting at looking at his drum set right now going, get me in front of the drum set. So like when I spoke with Jeremy, I interviewed the teachers, which I think is something I would recommend every parent who's seeking out musical instructors for their kids. Like interview the teacher, make sure it's a connection. Because like I interviewed a couple drum teachers and I was like, I don't think that's going to work out. But when I said to him, I said, listen, I'm not going to tell you what.
Take the joy away.
Right. And I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but at the same time, like this kid wants to play drum set. And I recognize as an educator, there are foundational skills that you have to teach him too. But can we sneak those in and not call it homework? And he's like, and what sold me on, and I tell this story to Jeremy, I've told it to him. I had him on my podcast and told it to him again. He said to me that night, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. He said, I want to turn him on, not turn him off. I was like, sold. Like, I didn't tell him that night. I said, I'll give you a call because I wanted to just make sure. But I was like, sold. Like somebody would have had to really work hard to talk me out of that at that point. And I called him the next day and said, let's do business. And
Mhm.
And it was great. Jeremy taught him so much, and to this
Mhm.
day I'm forever thankful. I mean, Logan's too busy now to be a regular student anymore, but like, just phenomenal experience. And
Mhm.
he kept that idea of turning him on to the instrument while sneaking in the
The
stuff he had to
rudiments,
know.
yeah,
Sure, it's all
yeah. Oh, you wanna play that John Bonham song. You got to be able to do this technique on your bass drum in order
sure.
to make that happen.
Well, and the other thing he did too with that is, speaking of John Bonham, is Logan's first concert was Creed. So I went to see the Creed reunion. I took Logan with me, other than Blue Man Group. His first rock concert was Creed. And he loved Scott Phillips, and he loved Alter Bridge, and I love Miles Kennedy as a singer and all that stuff. So he'd take these songs to Jeremy, and Jeremy go, Scott Phillips likes? And he'd be like, no, who? He's like, John Bonham. You know who else he likes? The guy from Living Color. I forget his name.
Will Calhoun.
Will Calhoun. Yeah. So, and to this day, Logan does in his own style. Logan will go over to the hi-hat while he's drumming and do this random hi-hat lift. It works in the time signature, but he does like a random hi-hat lift in the middle of it, which is totally a Will Calhoun thing. If you listen to Will Calhoun in Living Color, you'll hear
Will Calhoun is like he's a master of many, like he's a middle ground of rock, R&B, and jazz.
Mm-hmm.
Funk, rock, R&B, jazz, all that kind of stuff. Boom pop drummer.
Oh yeah. And what's great about Living Color is like everybody knows them for Cult of Personality, but there's so much, like, just listen to the other stuff.
Yeah.
It's just so great.
Yeah.
They're just such a great band.
But. So now it becomes an issue. You have this kid that is learning how to speak on this instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for him to really excel, he has to have experiences.
Yep.
Okay, so what were the first experiences that had?
So Logan wanted to play in a band, and I learned pretty early that he was pretty ahead of most of the kids his age in terms of his abilities. So it's like, well, that's not going to work. And he was already ready to play songs, so he learned Play That Funky Music by Wild Cherry. Mm-hmm. And at the time, Galiftes was still open over near the Cedar Cliff Mall, Cedar Cliff High School, and I think it's New Cumberland, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And he says, and Shay Quinn was over there, and Shay Quinn, for those of you who don't know, was the bass player and singer for the Sharks. They won the MTV Basement Tapes in the 80s, and mm-hmm. The Sharks were like gods in this area back then. And he's in a band called the Love Gods now, mm-hmm. and writes his own stuff. In fact, I got him working on recordings now. Shay Quinn, if you're listening to this, let's finish those recordings and get them out to the world.
Get your act together.
There's my little pitch to you, Shay. And Shay was running this open mic over at Galiftes, and Scott Frange was there, who played with the Middleton brothers, and he owns the Players Exchange in Lemoyne, which is, if you like vintage instruments, go visit Scott sometime in Lemoyne, and he'll tell you some stories. And I walked in, and I was like, well, I don't know much about Shay. I knew he was nice. That's all I knew. Like, I'd seen him, but I didn't know him. Like, I knew he was nice. So I was like, well, if nothing else, I'm going to walk in, and Logan's going to be in a safe situation. Like, no one's going to be mean to him.
Yeah. And
that was really what it was about for me. Like, get up there, play it. If it goes well, great. If it doesn't go well.
Now, he had to be scared to death.
Well, what's funny is, like, he wanted to do it. We went and we got there, and he goes, I don't want to do it now. And I said, Logan, I arranged this for you. Like, we're going. He's like, no, we're not. I don't want to do it. I'm like, we came all the way here. You prepared all week. In fact, for 2 weeks, like, just play it. You play the ones. He's like, well, no, people will laugh at me. And I said, Logan, I promise you're like I forget what he was, he was an 8-year-old kid. I said, you're an 8-year-old kid. I said, there's not a soul in this place that will laugh at you. And if they do, I got your back, and we will be out of here immediately. But I guarantee no one's going to laugh at you. So I went up, and I didn't even film the first one, because I thought, well, no, I'm just going to be there and be present and not worry about getting the right camera angles. And if looks could kill that night, and he was capable of killing someone with his looks that night, I'd be dead, because he was giving me this like death stare as he's Play That Funky. He looked like he was playing metal. He's like, playing metal, like, but it was,
or that look that he had for like every time he took a picture. When he was like 12 years old.
Right. No, it was worse. There was definitely anger in his face. Like, there was some contortions. So, but yeah, so he did it, and he came off stage, and of course the places I knew would happen went bananas. He played in time, and I didn't realize how ridiculously talented Shay was at the time, and he just kept him in time because Shay moves himself the entire time. So Logan actually learned from Shay to watch musicians for tempo changes, for change, and so on. I could tell you more stories about his growth, but that's probably not here for that.
Yeah,
anyway.
but the important thing, obviously, this is all important, but in an effort to create opportunities, this puts you in a lot of different situations and where you're meeting people.
I had to shake the hands and kiss the babies to create a network for him.
That is what we said. This is what makes you a connector.
Yeah, no, to grow. And
you're like a politician.
And then it was funny. This is how we met. Like, so we played.
You were shaking my hand and kissing my baby.
That's right, exactly. Your forehead at least.
No.
But no, he.
How did we meet?
So he played with Shay, actually, because Shay's drummer couldn't do a show, and I want to say it was at might have been Sierra Madre, but anyway, he definitely played Sierra Madre. So I lugged the drums out. Logan plays the show with Shay, and like it was funny. At one point, Shay does a mashup, and at this point, Logan only knew songs. He didn't know what a mashup was. So he's doing U2, some U2 song. I want to say "I Will Follow." Could be another one. Doesn't matter. And it's the same tempo as Tom Jones. It's not unusual. So he goes, "Just keep that going." Logan looks at me, and I'm like, and I would do things like this or like this and little. Because I know the songs. They were playing songs from my childhood, so I like knew the songs and could help him with the endings and stuff. And he would watch me for that. But at one point, he looks at me. He's like, gets wide-eyed, and I'm like, just keep it going. Just keep the groove. Like Shay will tell you where to go, and Shay takes it over, does an unusual, steers it back to U2. And that was his first mashup. And he's like, that was cool. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of neat. It's cool how they can do that. He's like. And of course, I think Logan needed new trousers after that particular mashup, but once he survived it, he was fine. But what happened was Kathy Welsh at the time was director of Perfect Fifth, and she had called Shay because they had a drummer drop out of they had a rock band class, and it was run by Derek. At the time, it was run by Derek Houston, who owns the Green Room Studios in Harrisburg, which the Green Room, you want to do a cool podcast, talk about the history of the Green Room sometime. And Derek, we went over there and they said, yep, just come in, fill this out and show up. And we ended up, there's a long story to it, but he just stayed there and was the drummer in the house bands. And then gradually Derek had to get back to doing stuff over at the Green Room because the studio was picking up, and somewhere in there you ended up there and we met, and that was that. And Logan became the drummer in the rock band program, and it's been downhill, uphill, I don't know, ever since. It's been a wild ride. And like I said, if Logan never does anything in the music industry beyond the local area, he's got some cool stories to tell his kids someday.
Yes. So I remember the audition. This was at the Perfect Fifth.
Yep. And Eric Wersing was there. In fact, Eric kind of ran the
Eric Wersing and I auditioned Logan.
Yeah.
And it was like, hey, was it Jimi Hendrix? Led Zeppelin,
which is right up Eric's alley too, because he's an incredible guitar player too. So I didn't even know you played guitar. I only knew you as the bass player at that point. So
in the company of those guys, three other guitar players. I've been playing guitar for 42 years.
Yeah,
but I'm not gonna. That's where the bass player in me comes out. You guys fight over that.
yeah, exactly. But it was, it was cool. And Logan, Eric and his wife Julie have been so kind to Logan too over the years, as you have. Just, at the recitals, he would play Rush songs, and of course, I didn't realize it at the time. I thought Van Halen was Eric's favorite band, but Rush is in fact his favorite band. I think. I don't know. Maybe Eric would dispute that, but
there's probably
so it's definitely top three. Top three, and he gladly played the Rush stuff with Logan, and they did some cool stuff too, as you did as well. So we putting together experiences for people, for kids his age, and the way you're going to learn to speak this language is not in a typical classroom, right?
We're not going to hand out, you're not going to speak this language simply by me handing out sheet music.
Right.
Okay. Your reaction,
Mm-hmm.
how you react, how you recover.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when I first met you, the thing we wanted to do that I think we agreed on is get them to experience as much as they can in performance and other things. And he was doing stuff all along,
Mm-hmm.
but we got him into Scarlet Revolver eventually. I don't think that was the first thing we did, because I think there's stuff that but the idea of getting them to experience music, experience
Well,
it
I think
on learning how that if you make a mistake, it's not the like it's not the worst thing in the world. You got to learn to recover. It's not how you fall, it's how you land.
right. And that's really, that was what I was going to say is like, that's the environment that we started to create. Like I would just mix sound with you, but it was really about creating that environment. And I think this is, as an educator, this is kind of schooled into them. You know, do this right, so you get 100. So you get an A, and if you get one wrong, you got a 90. Now you're a 90. You know, and I was like, we can't put the world into the school grading scale, because, like, you know, my school 70% is passing, and the analogy I always use is like, if I was a 70% good husband, I'm probably a good husband, right? But in a marriage, but if, you know, probably less than that, but in school I'd be a D. So you know what I mean? So it's, you have to kind of take those school scales and allow for the mistakes, because shoot, I
But
mean,
the thing of it is, we learn through our mistakes.
right.
So we don't try not to make mistakes, because if we try not to make mistakes, we're not pushing ourselves.
Well, that, and you have the experience like I had playing Living on a Prayer.
Yeah,
I was up there surviving, trying not to make mistakes.
yeah,
And then the result,
but you,
as a result, I had a terrible time. Not
yeah,
because of the company, because I
yeah.
mean, my son's the drummer. I love
You worry too
him.
much.
You're a great
But
friend,
that's what
but
I'm
like,
saying. But that's what I'm saying. It's like other people are that way too. It's like
sure,
it's
a
all
lot of
right to
people
make a
are.
mistake.
Oh
Let's
yeah,
get this out of the way. Let's
yeah.
make lots of mistakes.
Well,
And, but he did lots of stuff, and a lot of the kids, they did lots of good, great, over the top stuff. What is perfect? What do you think of as perfection
you mean in general or on music? In
on
music,
music?
perfection is watching musicians communicate with each other on stage without talking,
Okay.
whatever that looks like. Not
Yeah.
not the notes being right,
Yeah.
but like when you watch like, because for me, like the example I always have, I've seen Van Halen, I'll bet you 7 or 8 times. I can't even remember them all. I never saw him with Roth, but I saw him like in the Sammy era 7 or 8 times. And why did I love going to see Van Halen? It wasn't because I wanted to hear the studio albums to their perfection. It was because Eddie would play
He
long
was straight from
jams,
the script.
or he'd extend the solo, you know, like the Eruption solo in live was 11 minutes long.
Yeah.
On the record it's 100 minute 42 seconds, you
Yeah.
know. So it's that kind of thing. That communication between bandmates, to me, is perfection. And you know,
Yeah.
and
So
even back to
when
the,
people talk about perfection, they think there's a line of this is what perfection is, and it's like, for me, the best musical things that happen,
mm-hmm,
whether it's with me or people that I'm guiding,
mm-hmm,
is when you go beyond. It's almost spiritual.
mm-hmm,
When you cut the rope, and or you take off the training wheels, and the ball and the bike doesn't fall.
mm-hmm,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Uh,
Or you
that
see
is,
like
and
something
then
like
how
on,
do you quantify that? Should it be quantified?
mm-mm,
Okay.
no,
And
mm-mm.
in my work, it shouldn't, that's not perfection.
Well, perfection shouldn't even be a word that's even kicked around. I
Yeah.
mean, perfection conceptually is a fun thing to discuss, but like
Yeah.
perfection also can create a lot of undue stress because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like there's no, like I had this conversation with one of Logan's old bandmates, AJ, and he was talking about perfection one time, and I texted him back and I said, "What's the perfect song?" And he started to name some stuff. I'm like, according to you, you know, because I'm not like I have mad respect for Dave Matthews Band, I'm not a big fan of his voice.
Mhm.
So they're not for me, but that doesn't mean they're bad
Yeah.
or imperfect. They're
Yeah.
just not for me, because I can tell you for a fact that like 30,000 people every summer pack Hershey Stadium to watch him play. Like he's darn good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I have massive respect for him, and I would even go see him. I just, like, for me, I just can't, I don't drive long distance listening to him. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I think perfection's a bad word to use in music, because art isn't
Yeah.
perfect. Art is good enough. Art is what's perfect to you might not be perfect to me. You know, you have your favorite bands. It's all favorites. It's not.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that I like about what you do, and this is important, this is when I run my show at Cumberland Valley, which I'm sure we'll get to talk about a little bit. I
Mhm.
think it's important that you teach people that you're not just a musician. Nobody cares if you can stand up there and play 1,000 notes in a minute perfectly with perfect fretting.
Only guitar players do.
Well, that's true. Yeah, they'll stand back there with their arms folded.
Yeah.
You know, and I get
Is
that.
that,
I
is
get
that who
that
you want
point
to
too.
perform for?
That guy's not as good as me, but you know, whatever. That's fine. That's normal.
I can cut.
But,
I can cut more than he can.
yeah, sure. You know, and when you're geeking out, it's fun to geek out on that stuff. But
Yeah.
at the same time, like, it's about entertaining. I used to get on Logan's case all the time, and he'd sit up there and drum like he was like sad. I'm like, dude, remember, smile. Like, now you see him, he's stick tossing. He like brought the 80s back. You know, he's
Yeah.
stick tossing and twirling his stick and doing some fancy hi-hat motions and things like that. And that's because it's about entertaining. And then when he gets done, people are like, that was awesome. Did you see all the stick tricks and stuff he did? Nobody went, did you hear how perfect the notes were played?
Yeah. Well, the joy that created it.
That's what it's about. And, you know, you go watch those bands play, and like Shay Quinn's a perfect example. Like, I don't know if Shay plays perfectly or not, but I know he's damn entertaining. And
I'm pretty sure that Shay doesn't. He doesn't worry himself about perfection.
right.
I think
he
he's on
doesn't.
board with what I'm talking about.
And he can make, and he's one of those
time,
guys
it's
like
not
you
being
that,
perfect, not worrying about being perfect.
right. And he's one of those guys like you that you can plunk them in any band and they'll fit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he can fit in, and that's important. And those are the things that are entertaining. And those are the things you have to get across to musicians. Like, oh, when they come off stage, well, I missed 3 notes. Who cares? Miss 3 more. So you know, and then bop your head and smile. So we're entertaining. I mean, it's not orchestra. Orchestra is a different animal, but anything outside of orchestra, like jazz, I want to see the musicians enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
I want to feel like I'm there.
I don't even have that experience, to be honest with you. Like the orchestra, maybe they have to be perfect. Maybe.
Sure, that's different.
Yeah. So, but my art is the yes. So that is. Let's talk about Cumberland Valley and the music.
Yeah.
So you came together. You're the brain. I don't know if you're the brain behind it. They have their. You explain.
Well, so what happened is a bunch of years ago, we do this event called Thon, which is part of Penn State's Thon. It's the largest student-run philanthropy, probably in the United States, if not the world. I know it's the largest in the United States. It might be in the world. They raise somewhere around $13 million each year, and all of that money goes to the Penn State Children's Hospital, which is down in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and supports families whose children are going through cancer treatment. So, like, if you have a family member who's being treated for cancer, who's a child, they will pay the parents' bills. They will pay the co-pays and all of the things not covered by insurance, and you will get no bill. Your treatment is free, and they provide places for you to live, and they give you cash during the day so you can go eat at local restaurants and whatnot, so that you can be with your child, because we believe that parents should be with their children while they're being treated. So it's the Four Diamonds Fund. But Penn State runs it. So we do a mini-thon at Cumberland Valley, and we've last year, I believe, or 2 years ago, we broke the $1 million raised
just for Cumberland Valley.
Just for Cumberland Valley in 10 years. And so as part of the Thon event that we ran every year, there was always a band hour. But what they would do is just put a stage up there, and what from teaching rock band is that kids would be like, oh, hey, I'm buddies with you. Yeah, bass player, drummer show up, and nobody'd rehearse and they'd play. And and unless you gotten in a room and played with each other before, or you're a professional, it doesn't always work well. So they get up and jam, and it didn't sound good. So they were going to get rid of it. And I said, wait a minute, let's organize this a little bit. So I put together a show, kind of like X Factor had just come out, and American Idol was hot. And so we put the show, and they called it Thon Factor after X Factor. So I got judges who had worked in the music industry before. to come in and really we had a conversation with the judges because like my number one criteria is that nobody's booed, nobody's, we don't have the Simon Cowell that's made to humiliate you. It's not made for TV. It's made for constructive advice. So so constructive advice is different than humiliation.
Yeah, and the other part of this is constructive advice does not always mean butterflies and rainbows.
Correct. Like, I mean, you can say something positive about a poor performance, right?
Yeah.
So we and my thought with it was, the first year I think we did karaoke tracks, and it felt like we did it in a big theater that held 900 people, and it felt like a big, huge karaoke bar. And I was like, well, something's got to be better than this. And that's when I called you and I said, let's put a house band together. Let's be different. And at the time, I think there's some places doing it now, but at the time, as far as I could tell, there was no talent shows where there was a house band learning the songs for the singers. Mm-hmm. And it was like a heck of an undertaking. So when I called you, I'm like, I don't even know if this is possible or if you have the time for it. And strangely enough, we always pull it off, even though it's an exercise in herding cats sometimes. but yeah, so you guys come in and you learn these songs, and and I've gotten some pushback from time to time on like, why I don't use student musicians with this. And the story I like to tell is a couple of years ago, there was a young man who was doing Sweet Child of Mine, which is the iconic Guns N' Roses song. Mm-hmm. And he went to the Where Did We Go breakdown before he did the second verse. So, because he got lost.
Yeah.
And like to this day, like I think you and the band and maybe two other people are the only ones that know this happened. And you stepped out and you went 1, 2, and you played a guitar interlude, put it right back on track. He sang the second thing and then didn't mess up again and kept the song going. Whereas like if you hire the kids, sometimes, like, no offense to any of the kids, but yeah, this is why the pros are there.
Yeah.
Like no one caught that. I caught it. Mm-hmm. You guys knew it. The singer knew it. Not one audience member. I've told that story to a bunch of people. They're like, wait, it did? I remember that song, but I didn't see that happen. I'm like, and that's why they're professionals.
Yeah.
So we did this with the pros. And to be honest with you, what I always work on is you guys work on the music and the arrangements, because some of the songs they pick are songs that are like computerized EDM. Or have a drum machine or a keyboard
EDM,
or something.
A lot of EDM stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I
gotta make it into something human.
Right.
Humans can.
And I teach stage presence, because I teach the idea like, hey, remember, you're on a big stage. You got an audience to the right. You got an audience to the left. It's like 90 square feet. You got to move. You got to cover. You got to get the crowd involved. Like you got 5 minutes to show who you are, that kind of thing. And so we do that. And to be honest with you, like there's been some of the kids, and this is why I do it year after year, besides helping kids with cancer. Like when you watch some of those kids walk out on stage and become grown men or grown women after they walk off stage, and they feel so good about themselves and so amazing. And to know that you're a part of that just makes me like,
that's the good work.
That's the good work,
It's the good work.
And some of these kids need us more than we need them, but like, I love it. And a couple of years ago, we had one of our life skills kids open the show, and he did it with background dancers. And it was one of the most magnificent things that I've ever seen in my life. And the last year we were able to do it live. One kid raised $20,000 by himself. He ended up winning the show. And when they put the microphone in front of his face afterwards to talk to it, he's like, I didn't have any friends before until this night. And I was just like, that was it. I was just like, this is why we do it. And but I think kids need that. Kids need that. We make it safe. Like, I'm like, there is no one going to boo you. We are here for you. Like, if anyone boos you, I am with you, and I will find that kid and I'll throw them out of the show. Mm-hmm. And it's never happened in 10 years. I've never had to do it, but I would. If somebody booed one of the kids on stage, I'd be like, no.
Well, it's kind of like they want to see you. Most people want to see you do well. And if they don't want to see you do well, there's a jealousy issue.
Sure.
And it's like that. There's always that in team dynamics and
sure.
And
but I mean, dynamics, but 10 years of doing it, it's never happened. And I will never, because I always kind of introduce too, like, this is a positive night. Some of these people are on stage for the first time. Some of the kids, and the other thing that makes me feel good is some of the kids will have a story. Like I always say about Logan, he's got some cool stories to tell his kids someday. Some of these kids, like, this will be their performance. They perform in a theater with a band in a professional environment in front of 900 people. And that may be it. That may be the
You know
only
what's
thing
funny
that-
about this whole thing? Logan probably doesn't know how sublime some of these things, because sublime experiences that you're talking about that almost make you want to cry.
Yeah,
He's coming from a different headspace.
he's getting it though.
Yeah, I know now, but I'm saying he
Yep.
started this when?
His first live gig was 8 years old.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
I'm
the
saying-
Thon
I'm
Factor
saying
thing.
Thon-
Well, the Thon Factor thing. I mean, I think he was 10
Okay.
when we first did it.
Yeah. So with each passing year, he is getting it.
Yeah.
But I'm
Well,
saying
his first experience with that was he played. Shay Quinn had him play the West Shore Library, Frederick Lee Frederickson Library in Camp Hill, had them play 50 Years to the Hour, the Ed Sullivan set list from the Beatles performance. And then they played 90 more minutes of Beatles songs. And it was 500 people there, and they were all from the era of that Ed Sullivan appearance. And people had tears in their eyes. And he goes, "Dad, why are they crying?" And I said, "You gave them their moment."
yeah.
And at the time at 10, like 10's too young to be nostalgic enough to understand
Yeah,
what that
that's
moment
what I'm
is.
saying.
But he's getting older now and he understands like
Yeah.
what we mean a little bit.
Yeah.
But I knew it didn't matter at that point, because at
Yeah.
some point he's going to be able to look back and go,
That's what I'm saying. It's like
that was freaking awesome.
as he gets older, he's going to look back at this and it's like, whoa, it's going to be a different experience. As it should be.
That's a gift.
Yes.
Like those three guys that night on stage gave those people a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a magnificent gift.
Yes, absolutely. Sublime. That's what I'm saying when I say over the top,
Mm-hmm.
good energy
Yeah.
stuff.
But
that
every
you can't
musical
even
performance
explain.
is that to somebody.
Huh?
Every musical performance is that to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Logan played his first gig in a year a few weeks ago at Tellus with, like, he got to sit in with basically the rendition of the Sharks, and they did a Shark set. And it was like, I was over the moon excited. Like, what a spiritual experience for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
As his dad, as a fan of the music, I used to go see them.
Mm-hmm.
It was just awesome.
Yeah.
And I've seen it before. Like, it
Mhm.
wasn't like I was like, oh, wow, these songs, geez, I never saw this. Holy cow.
Yeah.
But it was awesome.
It was just good energy.
That was a gift. They gave me a gift that night.
Yes.
So, yeah.
All right. Mount Rushmore.
Huh. I knew you would do this to me.
Mount Rushmore.
All right, let's play.
Rock bands that matter.
All right.
Four
So
of
for those
them.
that don't know, we stole this Mount Rushmore idea from Tom Morello's Maximum Firepower podcast.
Yes.
He does this with people where you think of your top four or whatever, and
Yes.
Rod's category for me is way too broad, but
Rock bands.
figure out a way to do
top
it.
4 rock bands that matter.
Rock bands that matter in general are too hard, because like there's so many, and if you only name 4,
Who are the seed of the?
you're leaving about 20 of them off the list.
What are the seed?
But here goes. I think it all starts with the Beatles, at
Okay.
least in terms of modern rock music. I mean, we could go to the blues, but I don't know enough to be educated about that. Speaking of the blues, I think Led Zeppelin has got to be in that conversation, because they took old blues songs and created what basically you probably wouldn't have an 80s LA scene without them, and Van Halen. But I mean, Led Zeppelin's got to be in that conversation. I mean, I'm really torn. I think Black Sabbath for inventing heavy metal. I mean, the godfathers of heavy metal have got to be in there. And I mean, gosh, you could do so much. I mean, the Rolling Stones, for the quote unquote sexy band, Mick Jagger and dancing around up there. I mean, you hadn't seen anything like that.
The prototype of what a front man was supposed to be.
What a front man's supposed to be. But I mean,
he was vibing off of Tina Turner.
Yeah, but I mean, honorable mentions. I mean, without Bon Jovi, you don't have the 80s. Like, he was the first 80s quote unquote hair band, which I don't like that term because it's derogatory, but that LA metal scene was, and Bon Jovi wasn't even LA, but was that. And GNR, Appetite for Destruction's got to be an honorable mention, because like that debut album, that was a
game changer. That was
that's one of the very few records where I can play it straight through and there's not a song I skip. Not one.
Early Motley Crue.
Early Motley. I mean,
they predated Bon Jovi.
Did they?
Hmm?
Okay, maybe. All right. But then you could name Rush because that Rush really popularized the prog music. Prog was very underground until Rush gained
Yes, and yes.
prominence. But then you
Yeah.
have the Eagles and all of their, what the family tree of the Eagles, but
Yeah.
the harmonies that are the Eagles are there, and Queen took opera and turned it into rock, and
Yep.
U2 was probably one of the first great political bands of the 80s.
They were like the lasting. They came from a new wave kind of thing when they started,
Yeah.
and then they just became timeless, like Johnny Cash.
Yeah. I mean,
Whatever they played U2 music. They didn't play new wave. They didn't play punk. They just
yeah.
played U2.
Yeah. And then you have all the British metal. I mean, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, all that,
Mhm.
and non-British metal, like that took punk and made it melodic with Cheap Trick. So it's just
Mhm.
that's an impossible Mount Rushmore, Rod. Impossible.
Okay, so
Because there's so many. I mean, I named them all and I cheated because I
yes,
went way more than 4.
yeah. So I'm gonna for the Beatles.
Yep.
Whether you like the Beatles or not, they taught us how to do what we do.
Correct.
That had an impact on everything that came after that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Number 2, I'm gonna say Cream,
Okay.
because Cream took American blues. They were the early version. They took American blues that was an underground music that wasn't selling in America.
Mm-hmm.
Even earlier than Cream would be John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. But
Yeah.
we'll say Cream, that they took American blues and they made it accessible within a rock idiom. And all these people, all of a sudden, those who were underground and had no real global worth, they were Cream made that gold.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. James Brown.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're stepping outside of rock, holy cow, then the list just got bigger.
We'll just say James Brown because the one.
Yeah. Oh, but you could argue about Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5
and Led Zeppelin because they were everything.
Yeah. No, there's so many essential bands. I mean, geez, I don't know. That's too broad because
yes,
but that's just narrowing down the beauty of music and cutting it into 4 things.
Mm-hmm. That discussion needs to happen.
Okay. I'd much rather discuss like Mount Rushmore of guitar players.
Okay, do it.
You get 3 spots other than Eddie Van Halen, right?
Okay.
So
yes,
because Eddie's got to be on everybody's.
Yeah.
And then you have Jimi Hendrix would be mine. Randy Rhoads, because
like Randy, yeah,
it's Randy Rhoads, and oh no, Clapton probably.
Yeah, I can't. Clapton not for the reason that people think, because Clapton was the influential thing that brought American blues into the next level. Everybody was now aware of it.
Yeah,
they heard, okay, this is what you can do with that. Prior to Clapton, you heard jangly guitars, like Beatle guitars. That's what lead guitar was.
Mm-hmm.
Wayne Eddy, that kind of stuff with the Shadows and stuff like that. This is a completely other approach that was vibing off of blues.
Yeah.
Todd, I want to thank you. We're out of time.
Oh yeah, no, my pleasure.
Your list on the guitars is my list, so I'm not because that was perfect.
Yeah.
So, but thank you for this. And as I said,
pleasure's on.
We got to say one more thing, that you're now working in conjunction with the PA. Was it the
Central Pennsylvania Music Hall of Fame? And I just got on, so I'm still a youngin', so I can't take much credit for anything right now.
Huh?
I can't take much credit for anything with that right now because I just started.
Yeah. So what is that organization?
We're on the advisory board. We're looking at a couple of things for next year. I mean, most of the event for this year is planned and ready to go, which it's July 1st down at the Whitaker Center. I believe the event is sold out, but if you might be able to get some things on some of the alternative ticket sites, or if somebody can't go, maybe they'll sell you their tickets or whatever. But You know, I'm super stoked this year because my favorite band of the 90s that I followed around, the Badleys, is going into the Hall of Fame in the class of 21. So
Okay.
super excited, and super secret, not so secret, they're going to be performing that night, the original five. So, which
Okay.
is
Wonderful.
fabulous because they are just, I mean, Jeff and Pete's harmonies, just to me, Brett's storytelling in the songwriting, and I mean the simplicity of the rhythm section with Ron and Paul just holding it down. But the
I'm glad
simplicity,
they got it.
it's not as simple as it seems. Like they're just
Mhm.
Paul's voice is fabulous, and you know Ron's backbeat is perfect,
Mhm.
and you know so they're just wonderful people too. In addition to being great musicians, so
I'm glad they brought it
no,
together.
yeah, but we're looking at like next year. I think we're looking at some youth events. You know, we're the preliminary discussions with youth events. I'm kind of talking with Brandon and the group about that, and so some things coming on the forefront, and you know, it's probably too early to say much yet because
Yeah.
I'd hate to say something publicly and
It's
then have
just
it
good
not
energy, and thank you,
come
as
through.
I
But
said.
yeah,
And
it's gonna
I
be,
was the first to push your particular influence on that, because
yeah,
sometimes it is the fan or the connector or whatever you want to call it, in your particular instance, that makes stuff happen. That
yeah.
if we don't have that, we don't have a scene.
No, and every scene needs fans, not just
Yes.
bands. You know,
Yep.
we all have to work together.
Yes.
Like we can't be the competition piece has to go away. We have to work together. There's plenty of business for everyone. We can support each other, and you know, I think we can make it happen because
Agreed.
you know,
Agreed. Thank
music
you.
is about favorites. It's not about bests.
Yes. Agreed. Yes. Except Nickelback. See ya. I am kidding, everybody. I am kidding. We'll see you. Thank you, Todd.
Thanks.
And yeah, we'll talk again.
All right.